Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We're here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good or be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. You deserve to feel good. We all deserve to feel good. And here is a little video about what we do in the space as cannabis nurses. And then we will dive right into the show.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship, and what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
Oh, there you go. Growing in health, growing in cannabis. Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Sherry Mack. I'm the Vice President of Nursing and co-founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse. And I am a cannabis nurse, cannabis patient, advocate, activist, and a very, very passionate podcaster here to change the paradigm of healthcare. I'm really excited to announce that this is my 7th year podcasting The Green Nurse, Living Your Best Life. Started podcasting in 2018 when the National Council State Boards of Nursing came out with their guidelines that all nurses must have 6 essential areas of knowledge when it comes to cannabis as medicine. So I started podcasting to share those compelling stories of healing and to decrease stigma, since I too use cannabis as medicine. Before we get started on our very exciting show with an amazing pharmacist who specializes in cannabis therapeutics, we have a message from one of our sponsors at Bloom Hemp being shared by Elizabeth Mack, my co-host and CEO. So what's going on with Bloom, Elizabeth?
Well, hey, I'm Elizabeth. Good to see you all. So Bloom Hemp is a woman and nurse-owned national hemp CBD supplier, leading with quality, safety, value, and patient-centered care. Bloom Hemp products are USDA organic, CBD grown in the mountains of Colorado and Evergreen, and it's tested for potency, purity, and cannabinoid profiles. Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line, so call 970-404-HOPE or 4673, and we'll answer all of your questions and explain how and why CBD works in the body. And also, all of our viewers get a coupon. So Bloom Hemp has a Green Nurse coupon for 10% off plus free shipping. So visit them today and we'll see you there.
All right. Thank you, Bloom Hemp. And we are back to the show. So I don't know if our viewers know this, but cannabis nursing has been recognized as a specialty, as nurses are truly making an impact on advocating for the safe therapeutic use of cannabis. And today's guest is a pharmacist who is paving the way for other pharmacists. And I'm very, very excited to introduce Joe Friedman today to our viewership. Joseph Friedman is a pioneering cannabis pharmacist. He has played a pivotal role in the industry, With a wealth of experience and a strong background in pharmacy, he has been a beacon of support for countless patients navigating health challenges through medical cannabis therapy. His dedication has helped individuals transition away from harmful pharmaceuticals towards a more natural approach. As the founder of PDI Medical, which is a dispensary, Joseph established a standard of professionalism that set the bar high in Illinois for dispensaries. In a groundbreaking move, he collaborated with local pharmacy colleges to offer pharmacy students unique clinical rotations in a medical cannabis setting a national precedent. A skilled orator, Joseph has graced pharmacy and cannabis conventions with his insights and even hosted his own podcast, the Cannabis Rx Podcast. His contributions to Cannabis Rx Magazine have been notable, serving on the editorial advisory board and producing extremely insightful articles. The collaboration with the Pharmacy Podcast Network led to the creation of the CRx Podcast, leaving a lasting digital footprint for Google Chrome. Noteworthy accolades continue to adorn Joseph's career, including a significant recognition in the pharmacy sphere. And we're going to show you that video in a minute. His recent nomination as one of the 50 most influential leaders in pharmacy for 2023 attests to his impact. Joseph's involvement on the scientific advisory board of Accountability showcases his commitment to cannabis education. Under his guidance, Accountability introduced an innovative educational platform, the periodic table of cannabis plant molecules, unveiling it at the 2023 MJ BizCon convention in Las Vegas to great acclaim. Welcome to the show, Joe. It's really such an honor to have you on. You know, like I said, my daughter got into pharmacy school, and I'm just so glad that there are leaders that are out there, such as yourself, paving the way for pharmacists to lead in cannabinoid education. Welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. That's got to be one of the most terrific introductions I've ever had before a presentation or before getting involved in a podcast. So thank you. And it's good to see you, Elizabeth, as well. It's glad to be here. And if there is any interruptions from my computer telling me I've got a notification, don't worry about that.
That's okay. We roll with it. There's a lot of weird things that happens with technology. You just never know what's going to happen. And we just kind of roll with it, and the show will carry on regardless. So, okay. Joe, how did you get involved? Before I show this amazing video, let's just give our viewers a little taste of what brought you to cannabis. We all don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to become a cannabis pharmacist, or like my case, you know, I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a cannabis nurse. There's usually a little bit of a compelling story that leads you down that path. And so our viewers would mostly welcome to hear from you.
Okay. Well, back in 2013, I started taking an interest in getting into this business. There was a segment on 60 Minutes called The Green Rush, and it was about what was happening in Colorado. And I knew legislation was coming to Illinois, and I put together some partners, and we submitted applications to get a dispensary in the state of Illinois when Illinois first rolled out the idea of legalization of a medical cannabis program. We were the 12th dispensary to open up in Illinois when it first began in the end of 2015. And we started having pharmacy students doing clinical rotations in the fall of 2016. So, and then it's just been surreal from that point on.
Yeah. So how was PDI Medical Dispensary different from all of the other Illinois dispensaries? What made you guys a little bit different?
Well, when we opened up on December 21st, 2015, there was a dispensary that was north of us that opened up 45 days before, and they had 400 people at their door on day one. They were the second dispensary to open. We had 3 patients at our door on day one. So I immediately had to cut staff, I had to cut hours, and we just had to try to survive. But over the course of the next 6 months to a year, people started to recognize that we were just different than all the other dispensaries in Illinois. The fact that we were pharmacists, we had a holistic nurse, not a holistic nurse, a hospice nurse on board as well, and the pharmacy students, and people just started gravitating towards our dispensary when they realized that we were the real deal and that we weren't just selling pot. We were actually holding hands with the patients that walked in, gave every patient a 20-minute to a 2-hour consultation, similar to when you walk into a doctor's office for the first time, and you've walked into a few doctor's offices, Sherry. You fill out a form that is all of your demographics, your your weight, your exercise, your eating habits, your sleeping habits, the drugs you're on. That's what we had patients fill out. And so sitting on the other side of the table, every patient that filled out this form, we had all this great information to be able to give them anywhere from 20 minutes to a 2-hour consultation to get to the bottom of what they were looking for to do. I actually turned away some patients because I didn't feel like cannabis should have been the number one thing that they, maybe they had, an upper respiratory tract disease or something like that. But we were there to help patients and not necessarily looking at it as the end of the pot, the rainbow for the pot of gold.
Right. So, well, before you, what kind of research did you do prior to opening up your dispensary? Right. So you had mentioned that you would.
Yeah.
So prior to opening up a dispensary, you had mentioned that you did some research.
Yeah. I made a bunch of phone calls and I set up appointments in Colorado with dispensary owners. And you go to Colorado, you go down Broadway, and all the dispensaries are up and down Broadway. And, I had appointments and I would meet with these people. And, by and large, a lot of them just felt that, pharmacists were too expensive and there was no need for them when you can pay a bud tender, $13, $14, $15 an hour, and didn't see a need for it. So I learned the wrong way to do it. And then prior to opening up my dispensary, I shadowed a pharmacist in Minneapolis where there was a pharmacist mandate. And but that still didn't prepare me for what was to be our experience at PDI Medical. It took another 3 to 6 months of just sitting across from patients, doing the research and understanding and learning, how to handle all of this with all the products that are available, all the different routes of administration.
Yeah, the patient journey can be very, very complex. We have this plant in so many different forms, so many different cannabinoids, and and nuancing it can be challenging for new people.
Yeah, 100%. I remember I met you in Denver at MJ for MDs at the first conference in fall of 16. And we were discussing, the medical model and how much it's needed, because I don't know what that first dispensary was, but it could have been cookies, right? With 400 people in the door, but I walked, when I needed to find cannabis in 2014, I went to the dispensary when I first got a card and said, how do I use this for this shoulder surgery I just had? How do I use it for blood pressure and for sleep? And for those sorts of things. And of course they're like, you can buy this flour, get some GDP, and here's a cookie. That was it, right?
Yeah.
And we've come a long way since then. And so the iterations in the pharmaceutical model and the products, I'm sure, you have quite a take on, how we've went from there to here and what's next.
Yeah.
Right. And we had, patients coming from, initially from other dispensaries because they learned about us. They had a bad experience at the other dispensary. And then we had patients coming from Chicago. We were in a northern suburb of Chicago. Then we had patients coming from Southern Illinois, because they heard about us. Then I had a professor of pharmacy come from Israel to see how we were managing what we were doing with pharmacy students. And so she shadowed us for a week, and it was incredible.
That's amazing. So one of the other questions is how were the employees for your dispensary selected and trained?
Great question. I had one good partner. The other two weren't. We decided before we opened, when we knew we had a license, when we were building out, we received a lot of resumes. And so what we did is we went through those resumes, and then we had a 1.5-day meeting in an office building nearby. And we had all these people sitting around, and we brought in a good person from Colorado that I met and I'm still good friends with, and his partner. And so they spoke, I spoke, my good partner who's a lawyer spoke, and we observed that room full of like 25 people and made our decision on who to hire out of those 25 people. We started with, I think 8 or 7 or 10 of them or something like that.
Well, so did you videotape this and you watched their reactions to how you were disseminating information, see who's interested, see who's scrolling?
We just observed, and we made some good decisions because we had zero turnover in the 4 years that PDI Medical was open.
Which is unheard of. Normally it's a 60% turnover in every dispensary.
Right. Right.
Yeah, you're doing the right
thing. You guys
thing.
are doing the right thing. And that brings us to the medical door. Elizabeth's dream. Elizabeth has a dream. Elizabeth, share your dream.
Well, okay. I decided to call it the medical door because people are making great medicines. People are selling these medicines, but nobody interprets clinically how to use cannabis as a medicine for patients. And that's what we do, right? That's our model. And in my dreams, we're going to have one door that's adult use and recreation and alcohol replacement and all of that, and another door where people can go in that have justified medical reasons, which most of us do, and say, I want more guidance, and they'll be able to book appointments and have one-on-one counseling rooms and small group trainings on Saturday mornings to talk about cannabis and cancer, cannabis and chronic pain, and if you want to wean off opiates and how to do that safely. Right. So it's a medical door. It's a big difference. And there's a dichotomy on how we use cannabis in America and globally. And going forward, this is my dream that all dispensaries adopt this and start hiring nurses or pharmacies or pharmacy techs or anybody to help really disseminate the information that's needed for patients.
Because, and I'll just kind of give like a little patient journey. And this is just my own personal patient journey. I started off using cannabis as medicine. I was sick as a dog on over 18 pharmaceuticals. Once I was able to bridge the gap from what the pharmaceuticals weren't providing and wean off of them, then cannabis became about wellness, right? Wellness and a lifestyle. And it's a lot different. What I take now as a patient is so much different than what I took early in those years. And so being able to differentiate, there's the medical. We were talking about cannabis is a recreational drug. Cannabis is a pharmaceutical drug. Cannabis is a phytobotanical nutrient, a nutraceutical. Interacting with multiple physiologies of the pleiotropic at the exact same time. And so patients that come in, they're confused by it all. They're like, is this medical? Is it recreational? I'm like, no. It acts as medicine in your body. We like to, as nurses, say you're either using it appropriately or you're not. The use and misuse of cannabis, as opposed to saying, being so stringent on, are you using it as medicine? Are you using it for recreation?
Well, and the definition needs to be, the products, the choices, the routes, and the dosing, right? And that really makes all the difference. And you can talk about the pharmacology of all of it.
I could.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, and Sherry, I mean, we're all on the same page here, and and my staff, I talked about how we hired them. But, the beauty of how well they were educated, and we had the most educated staff in the state of Illinois, is these pharmacy students coming in for 6 weeks. They would need to do 2 presentations as a requirement of their school in front of the staff. So on Tuesday mornings before we opened for business, we would have a staff meeting, and we would have one of these pharmacy students do a presentation. And generally it was on a qualifying condition, the pharmaceuticals that are used for it, and how cannabis could be a better choice. And so we all sat around in a circle. And at the beginning of this podcast, I tried to get my golden retriever, who was in the dispensary every day with us, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we all sat around and we learned, and we were the most educated. I had the most educated staff in the state.
That's amazing. So tell us about the nurse, because we're nurses. What do you think the nursing role is when it comes to, what are your thoughts about the nurse's role in cannabis therapeutics and how they might fit into a dispensary?
I thought her name was Sarah, and she's actually a friend and a neighbor, and she wanted to come work for us. And she became an RN, and then she got a specialty in hospice. I said, come aboard. And she was fantastic. She did so much good for the patients that came in. She did a ton of hand-holding. She did some recommendations. She was behind the counter, like my product specialist. I never use the term bud tender. We always use the term product specialist. She was behind the counter, and she did some consultations. But for the most part, she selected products for the patients, where the pharmacist would be in the consultation room going through and figuring out the cannabinoid, the terpenes, the ratios and the profiles and the routes of administration. And then the products would be selected by the people that were in front, including this hospice nurse.
Nice. So she helped with product selection.
What a wonderful team. So how long did this run, and what happened to your dispensary?
Well, we ran from December of 2015 to the end of 2019. I'm not going to get into all the horror stories. I'm sure you have your own. But we had two partners that just weren't a great fit, and downright toxic. One was downright toxic, and I won't get into the details, but we started getting offers from some of the big MSOs, multi-state operators, to sell. And this is when recreational was coming to Illinois and valuations were going sky high. And we just decided, well, when recreational comes to Illinois, we would have to become like your two doors, Elizabeth. We would have to have one door for medical, one door for recreational. And then we would have the option to open up another recreational dispensary. That's what the state was giving us. And I and my one good partner decided we don't want to do that. We wanted to get those partners out of our life. So we sold.
There you go.
Yeah, you got to have alignment.
Yep.
You just do.
Yes, alignment is key because this is your life work, right? I mean, it's your life work.
I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, I can feel that right through the camera there as well, right? And what I love too is, one of the other questions is, what have you done to combat misinformation about cannabis? Because there's a lot of misinformation.
During the time I was running, we were running the dispensary. My wife was also very involved. She's an expert in marketing. She did all the patient interviews and the newsletters, and she was fantastic. There was I did a lot of public speaking, and there was one event where I was actually in the same room, and it was advertised, with a prohibitionist from Sam. And he's very well-spoken guy. He's a PhD, but everything is all about cannabis use disorder and commercialization and psychosis and all the stuff from Alex Berenson. I'm sure you know who he is, the New York Times writer who wrote a book, Marijuana and Psychosis. Anyways, so we had a head-to-head debate, and the room was full of people. It was in a temple. And I let him say his stuff, and I knew exactly what he was going to say. It was like a broken record. And then I got up, and I just didn't even bother to combat what he said. I just said, you can ignore everything this guy just said, and let me tell you the facts. Let me tell you the truth, because it's the truth and the actual experience of being in a cannabis dispensary that gave me the knowledge to be able to combat a prohibitionist like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want to speak about it, gentlemen?
You want to speak a little bit?
No, I'm not going to mention his name, but one thing I did do recently, and you're probably aware of this, about 5 months ago, Health and Human Services got a letter from Earl Blumenauer, the congressman from Oregon, about rescheduling cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And I was in the car, and I got a call from a friend of mine in the industry. He goes, did you hear the news? I said, yeah. No, I didn't. And so he told me, and he goes, did you see the tweet from Kevin Sabat? And I think you guys know who Kevin Sabat is, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I said, no, I haven't seen the tweet. And he goes, well, let me just read you the highlights. So he started reading, and I said, look, and I'll just go home. I'll go on Twitter, and I'll read the whole thing myself. And when I went home and got onto Twitter, I found out that Kevin Sabat blocked me on Twitter. So I consider that a badge of honor, right? But that motivated me to download his resume and spend about 3 months putting together an email to his personal email address, basically not saying, hey, you're wrong and you're an idiot, and, just basically trying to give him truth and science and facts rather than the stuff that he pushes out there. And I copied about 1,000 people on the email.
And what happened?
And I posted it online, and just recently I posted the fact that his response was, and this was towards the end of December. So I got an email response from Kevin Sabat. It was, "Hi, I get a lot of emails. Thanks for sending me an email. I read everything I get. I'll get back to you as soon as I can." It was an automated response. And so I took a picture of that response and I put another post on LinkedIn about how I sent out this email at the end of December. And this is the only response I got. So prohibitionists really aren't interested in listening to the other side of the story. They're only interested in their own misinformation.
And why is that?
Yeah.
In your opinion, why? Because we see
money.
Cognitive dissonance. You present fact after fact after fact after fact after fact, story after story. No more cancer, but you're making that up. So we have a huge dissonance. You have patients that are coming forth with these most amazing stories of healing with cannabis, coming off of pharmaceuticals, no evidence of disease. I'm off of 400 micrograms of fentanyl, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why? What is the cause of it's all money? Is that what it really is? Is it money?
I think it's money. I think it's, Sabat started his organization, I don't know, about 8 years ago with former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who himself was an alcoholic and a drug abuser, recovered now. The only thing that really didn't hurt him was cannabis, right? And I put out an article in a new pharmacy magazine with Dr. David Ostro, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. But the article was about the two government agencies, NIDA and SAMHSA, that's put out just misinformation after misinformation about cannabis. And this is the stuff that the SAM organization goes to for everything. Anyways, so David Ostro told me about a meeting. Do you remember Jeff Sessions, the former attorney general during the Trump campaign? Do you remember his attitude?
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Exactly. Well, the story that I got was that Sabat, who was involved with 3 presidential administrations in drug policy, he's got a lot of federal connections. He had a meeting with Jeff Sessions, closed door meeting, where Sessions was somehow, some way involved with government money that was appropriated to the communities most impacted by the opioid epidemic. And Sessions said, "Hey, Kevin, I love what you're doing against the marijuana industry. Let me sift off some of this money and just help fund it or get you started with it." And so misappropriation of federal funds. I've sent articles to investigative journalists around the country to try to get to the bottom of the story so we can put them in jail and fine them a bunch of money. But it's really hard getting that kind of information.
Wow. We need more whistleblowers.
We do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions?
No, I just go.
Yeah. So here's another good one too. And then I want to get into accountability. If you were to write a book about your experience in the cannabis industry, what would the first chapter cover?
The trials and tribulations of opening up a dispensary with partners. Sometimes the worst ship you can get on is a partnership. And so it would be about just the bad partners that we unfortunately got involved with.
All right.
Okay.
And then the other one is what would the last chapter cover?
It would cover just all the stuff I'm doing right now, the desperate need for education and scientific, good science that supports. I mean, it's not a benign drug. There are dangers with cannabis, just like every drug, but it's definitely a lot safer than a lot of pharmaceuticals. So that last chapter would just be about how I'm getting, heavily into the whole educational aspect of it.
Awesome. That's amazing.
And that leads into accountability. So
accountability.
What's your current business with accountability? Explain how it got started and what it entails.
Well, I didn't start accountability. It was started by 2 or 3 other people. They were the founders, and it's a cooperative. So if you understand what a cooperative is, it's usually a member-owned business where the business supplies goods or services, to those members for a fee. And that's what accountability is. So they're involved with education. And Dustin Sulak is on the scientific advisory board. I'm on the scientific advisory board. And about 8 months ago, they wanted to put out an educational platform that would be very successful and everyone would recognize. So we got on a Zoom call, and their idea was, hey, let's do a periodic table of the cannabis plant. And I said, great idea. So we all got online on different screens and said, does this already exist? And it does. You can buy a beautiful periodic table of the cannabis plant from Amazon for $12. And what it is, it's very colorful, a lot of pictures of flowers, indica, sativa, some medical information, not a lot, but it's all the funky names, Ghost Train Haze, Maui Wowie, Bruce Banner. And I said, guys, I don't think anyone has actually done the molecules of the cannabis plant, the ones that have medical benefit. So we all looked further and further and further, and we couldn't find it. So that started the whole idea of putting together a periodic chart or table of the cannabis plant molecules. And so I was tasked with figuring out and putting together and understanding, I think you're going to put it up there, the molecules that actually have medical benefit. So there's 51 molecules in this chart. The green are the cannabinoids. The yellow goldish are terpenes. The darker ones are the flavonoids, and then down below are a few precursor acids. And right in the middle is a QR code to be able to get to the interactive version of this, which is under development right now. But the whole idea behind this is you'll be able to, so I selected about 51 molecules, sent that to a graphic designer. This graphic designer created the periodic table. Then it was sent to an intern for accountability, who created over 187 pages of documentation supporting these 51 molecules. So if you click on any one of these molecules on the interactive version, what it does and the science behind it will pop up. Now, the beauty of what this is also going to do, the interactive version, is there's going to be a pull-down bar on one side or the other, where there's going to be 40 to 45 conditions. So say, for example, give me a condition, Elizabeth.
Dementia.
Huh?
Dementia.
Okay. If dementia is one of the, so basically the pull down, there'll be dementia. You click on it, and the molecules that address dementia the most in scientific literature are going to light up. And then you can print that, bring it to a dispensary and say, I want a product that contains this, this, and this molecule in it. And it's going to drive the growers to make products that have those molecules in it. Then the last thing that the accountability founders want to do with this is they want to select a handful of molecules for 3 to 5 different conditions and do a preclinical trial. And we've got a doctor in Illinois who has 10,000 cannabis patients. So the preclinical trial will be with his patients. And then we'll collect all the data. And then after 6 months or a year of doing this, we want to take the IP and sell it to big pharma or to an OTC company to make pharmaceutical grade products with molecules in it for particular conditions.
That is absolutely fascinating. I have an Excel file where I have cannabinoids and terpenes, and then I have conditions, and I have the drugs that people use to treat those conditions. And I've been hand doing this myself. So, I'd love to work with you on the next iteration of my Excel sheet, but this is fabulous.
Well, Elizabeth, right along the lines of what you're talking about, I created a spreadsheet because 80% of these molecules are going to address inflammation. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. But there's some research on maybe 3 or 4 that it's heavily researched. So I created a spreadsheet for all of the conditions that these molecules address and gave it a 1 to 10 on a 1 to 10 scale, how much research is behind that. So 5 and up being a lot, 1 to 5 being not so much. And so we have a weighting for all these molecules for the different conditions.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. I can't wait to dig in and play with this.
Mm-hmm. Really good stuff. So cannabis periodic table of molecules.
Yeah.
And this interactive This is a QR code that opens up. You said it's going to open up into an app, correct, Joseph?
It's going to open up into accountability, and you'll be able to find it. So the idea is to have this on every wall in every doctor's office, to be able to click on a molecule or click on a condition and say, okay, patient, here's what you should be looking at as far as treating your fibromyalgia or dementia or whatever.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Absolutely fascinating. Good job. Wow.
Yeah, amazing.
Really, really impressed. Yeah, like seriously, that's just, I'm jaw dropped. Like literally, Elizabeth just put her phone up and looked, and we're gonna be like nerds all night long looking through it. So, I'm so grateful that you've created this. This is going to be such a game changer for so many people that are new. Just amazing. So
well, everyone recognizes the periodic table, right? So people will gravitate towards it. And then if it has anything to do with for my birthday, my son and his girlfriend got me a shirt that says most influential pharmacists on the front, and it's got the periodic table on the back.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I bet you're a big hit at all of these crowds and conventions as well. One of your questions is, what do you do differently when you give a presentation at these conferences, right?
Well, I started off doing it in pharmacy conventions, and the first one I gave was the National Association of Specialty Pharmacy in Florida. I forgot, Miami maybe, and I would start off my presentation with, Okay, you're all pharmacists in the audience. Let's see a show of hands for those pharmacists that believe that pharmacists should be on the front line of this industry. And 7 years ago, half the hands would go up, and then I would say, well, I hope I can convince the rest of you, after I give my presentation and the information I'm going to share. More recently, I gave a presentation to 250 pharmacists in Chicago. 250 hands went up. There's a groundswell of interest. And there was one pharmacist that was a naysayer, and I didn't even have to destroy this person. I mean, the rest of the crowd did for me.
Well, because they see. I mean, they've watched Overdosed and Painkillers, and they know that it's and when you think about the short and long-term consequences of taking these pharmaceutical drugs day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, how many people have been on 5 or more polypharmacy drugs, for 20 years.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're on 5 or more pharmaceuticals, there's about a 50% chance that they're interacting, right? 10 or more pharmaceuticals.
Well, Sherry, one of the things that we did, I mentioned before, is we went through all the drugs a patient was taking. Mm-hmm. And a number of times we actually saw 2 drugs that interacted, say, for example, serotonin syndrome, that would be causing some of the patient's issues. And I would say, does both your doctors know that you're taking these 2 drugs together? So we caught a lot of drug interactions that alleviated a lot of discomfort and issues for that patient.
So 9 times out of 10, you could even see by looking at their pharmaceutical list, you need to talk to your doctor about this first to see whether, because these 2 things might be the cause of your problem to begin with, right? You don't even need as much cannabis as you think you do, because the drugs you're taking are interacting and causing these symptoms to begin with.
And most importantly, and I think the 2 of you can appreciate this, when a cancer patient comes into the dispensary, I mean, how do you manage that? We always set expectations, because a lot of them have gotten their affairs in order. They're on chemotherapy. They're feeling like crap. The end is near, or supposedly near, and they come in. Well, one thing that we have is the golden retriever to kind of brighten up the room. But when I was sitting across the table from them, there's 2 ways that we would treat every cancer patient that walked in. One is palliative, and the other is treatment. Yeah. For palliative, I mean, it's a slam dunk. Eating, sleeping, appetite, things like that. Yeah, depression. Treatment, I was always very cautious. I never wanted to go up against their oncologist and say, no, try, get off that crap. And try. I would say, follow your oncologist, but here's a couple of podcasts from Dr. Joe Goldrich out of Denver. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah.
And he had a couple of podcasts, and I would share it with every cancer patient. And Dr. Goldrich, I would call him, from time to time when I had a really difficult cancer patient. So we always approached with high caution and set expectations. It was so important to do that.
Yeah, I love his book that came out in January,
Right.
Cannabis, the Cannabis Cancer Connection.
I
Right?
have
And
Articles.
THC, CBD, CBG, CBN. We're and with all the protocols, and then spacing from the chemotherapy, maybe abstain for 3 days and then resume 3 days after. To some you want to use concurrently, some you don't. Right. And then just supporting and low dosing for comfort and palliation, when somebody's using other and immunotherapy and when to back off on that.
Right. And with like glioblastoma, Goldrich was using high dose THC and CBD with alkylating agents, drugs that and was having success.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah. And this brings me into, what has been some of your work with the MSOs, the multi-state operators, and are they developing anything to really make these kinds of protocols with healthcare influence? Are you still working with them, and how do we do more of that?
Well, we did sell to one of the big MSOs, and then they offered me a job, without an interview, just to be their national director of pharmacy. And this is, we sold right before COVID. And so I started working for them right during COVID. So I didn't spend a lot of time in the office, but I was working on a lot of patient-oriented projects, like a national hospice program, a telemedicine program, a pharmacy residency program, some others. But at the same time, the company was just rolling out their brand of dispensary. So that was their focus. So just under 2 years, I went to HR and I said, what am I doing here? And HR just said, well, Joe, you're kind of right. We changed directions after we hired you. We no longer need your services. And so that was very telling. And I think there's a bunch of people at this MSO that probably are involved with the medicinal side of it. But overall, the company just was really focused on other things on the rec side. That's where the money was.
Yeah, and still, and even if you think about the gold rush with CBD and everything going up, and then COVID hit, and all of a sudden all the gas stations were carrying CBD, and it went like this, and people aren't growing it anymore. And the rec model is social equity and consumption lounges, and food and beverage at the same time. All of that, even in California, it's the same. So it's hard. To get folks to really pay attention and want to do the right thing.
Joe?
Exactly. Yeah.
But I had just had the best question, so knowing that we need this medical door and leading into what the HHS published last fall and recommending the rescheduling to Schedule 3, and we'll talk about what that is. But, what is the idea for you? When is this going to happen? What is that going to look like? Is it going to be this year, this summer? All of the pundits are saying, by the summer, it's going to be rescheduled. What do you think and why?
I think that, with the presidential election looming, I think, the Democrats want to do something to, get in the young vote. And I think, taking cannabis off Schedule 1 would be a beautiful thing. I don't think Schedule 3 is the right place to put it. I think, and you could probably agree that, any kind of Schedule 3 drug like Valium or whatever is dispensed by a pharmacist out of a healthcare setting. So imagine having Schedule 3 drugs dispensed out of every dispensary in America. So I think that's going to be very confusing for a lot of people. So I think it has to be descheduled completely. But I'll take Schedule 3 over Schedule 1 any day.
Agreed, and we all believe in descheduling, of course.
Nurses, nurses support descheduling.
And I've heard some people say create a Schedule 6, which is just for cannabinoids. Would that be crazy, or is that
I think that's a wonderful idea.
Okay, yeah, but if it was Schedule 3, let's play it forward a little bit. So we do have biotech then creating the pharmaceutical formulations, right? And then the dispensaries are still going to be out there in the state-sponsored programs having the adult use sort of model, right? And then patients can be trained as to which door they want. We know the Epidiolex, right? That's a $3,000 a month drug, whereas it's 100 milligrams per mil, 3,000 milligrams of purified CBD. What if somebody gets that in a dispensary of something that is lab tested, potent, all the same profiles, and it's $100? What do we think about how the patients are going to answer with their feet, choices, or are doctors going to be driving this? What do you think that conversation is going to look like?
Well, do you think GW Pharma would really allow the drug wholesalers that ship Epidiolex to hospitals? I think it's mostly hospitals, it's not retail. Ship that to a dispensary to dispense? I don't think so. I had one of my pharmacy students who became a pharmacist, worked at a children's hospital, said it was really messy to work with, very difficult to work with. It was very expensive. I mean, it worked, but it was just really difficult to work with. I can't imagine a dispensary, working with any of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay. You might know our neighbors to the north. Sativex is a pharmaceutical drug, right? In all of the European nation countries. Canada also has adult use and recreational access. How do they treat their one-to-one oils in the dispensary versus Sativex?
You'll have to ask someone from Canada. I've got some connections there, and I can certainly ask that. But that's a great question. I haven't heard that question before.
I just thought of it. I see Gail Peterson. She's in North Dakota. Maybe she'll weigh in and tell me if she has any notice about this. But yeah, that is where we're going, right? Because there will be a medical model and a pharmaceutical pathway if it is a Schedule III. And we like to do. We're incrementalists in America, right? They don't like to do. They're not. There's so many prohibitionists still living in Congress. I don't think that they're going to really vote to just deschedule it. But who knows? But if it is rescheduled, we are going to have to build two pathways. And then that goes back to the education, right? And that's where we are as well. Really educating the masses and saying this is not just an option of last resort, right? But a wellness. And it's an and it's not an or. That's the other thing that I'm sure you've talked to patients about as well. Let's see if we can wean maybe down some of the dosage of that pharmaceutical, but you might still need it. This is an and, it's complementary. Right?
No, I agree. And, I think something needs to be done because it can't stay the way it was. We were paying an effective tax rate of 93%, due to 280E, the IRS tax code. Yep. And it was ridiculous. I mean, no one's making money in this industry because of 280E.
Yeah, and that goes to why there's not pharmacists and nurses in dispensaries because they can't afford them.
Right. And did you know that this is several years ago, but Colorado dispensaries, because they were only dealing in cash, were taking bags of cash to the IRS office, and they were getting fined for doing that, but they were required to do that. So our government is about as messed up as it's ever been, and it could get messed up even more. If I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, I well, the polarization is extreme. Yeah. It's that's the main problem. We don't have civility in Washington anymore.
Right.
So will 280E go away when cannabis is rescheduled?
Yes, 280E will go away, and I think you'll see a bump in all these cannabis stocks that are all in the crapper right now. And continuing to go down and reach new lows every day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You want to read one of the questions that we have in there? Any of these questions?
Medical pod in Australia gives me restless leg syndrome. I twitch trying to sleep. Is that PGRs? I'm not sure.
I twitch trying to sleep. Is that the PGRs in the
fertilizer
program growth regulators? Huh. I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah. Something about, just basically said, so this is of someone that's from Australia that's visiting and saying that the cannabis in Australia is worsening his restless leg syndrome. And he was wondering if it had to do with fertilizer. Huh. And I'm not so sure that that's probably.
It could be pesticides, and it's something that's
also. What are the cannabinoid profiles, the terpene profiles? What else are you taking with it? Are you taking pharmaceuticals?
Yeah. And in Australia, that's a pure pharmaceutical model, right? They have everything tested and GMP certification on everything. So they can't have pesticides. So that can't be it. But restless leg syndrome is a hard condition, and some drugs cause it.
Right.
I never had it before in my life, but there was a time after I was prescribed 50 milligrams of trazodone for sleep. And every time I took that, I felt like my legs were jumping in bed. And I'm like, I'm not taking this anymore. So
Wow.
it caused it, right? And, I know some people that take trazodone to alleviate that. It's just
On the buy
And what is your opinion on the different routes of administration? As we all know, there's combustion, there's vaporization, there's edibles, there's tinctures, there's patches, there's RSOs under the tongue, there's pills. What is your feeling about the different routes of administration?
Well, I love them all, and I think they all serve a purpose for different reasons.
Yeah. And I teach people stacking.
Yeah,
right.
that's
Because
what we teach.
long acting, short acting, right? We have tinctures that are, intermediate use, and you can use that 4 to 6 hours apart a few times a day. You could take a capsule in the morning and inhalation as needed. So, and topicals, of course, I've had 3 shoulder surgeries, so that's where I started. And so for me, it's all about stacking and teaching patients agency to read their body and use their medicines appropriately.
Like when I first started using cannabis as medicine, it was all inhalation because that's all I knew.
Yeah.
Right. There wasn't an instruction manual. It was just, I went to the dispensary, I bought all these products and said, if I can figure this out, you can call me the green nurse. And literally I had to take myself on a journey, but it was mostly inhalation. And then slowly but surely, as I started learning about the different routes, I only use inhalation as needed, or if I want to have an adult use experience. I prefer to use the capsules and tinctures and topicals and inhalation to boost, to make whatever I'm taking last a little bit longer, or to enhance the efficacy.
How about you?
Well, as a pharmacist working in hospitals, retail, wherever, the only inhalation drugs that were out there were the handheld inhalers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nebulization, for asthma drugs or whatever. And it was cold inhalation. So, the whole idea of bringing anything into your lungs that's combusted or vaporized was always something that was kind of like, it's the fastest way to get the cannabis into your system, but what else are you putting into your lungs, right?
Exactly.
So we actually had a representative from Volcano or one of the companies come by and was trying to promote his products. And he says, well, what's your breakout of products that you buy? So we did a purchase report, and our purchase in the breakout of inhalation products, flower and vaporization, was significantly lower versus all the other routes of administration versus all the surrounding dispensaries. So we didn't do this on purpose, but we just dispensed a lot less combustible and vaporization products than everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Yeah. And we know that even like with Bloom Hemp, right? We start all of our, especially senior clients, out with CBD and the minor cannabinoids and tinctures and topicals. And
Because you really don't need a lot of THC.
yeah. And
You don't
capsules.
need a lot of it
You don't.
to influence, if we when we produce anandamide upon demand, it's fast, right? And so the anandamide molecule is very different than the THC molecule, and the THC molecule is going to plug in to that receptor a little bit longer than the anandamide that's just nudging the receptor. The enzymes are creating it and breaking it down. So it's just, we want to have the CB1 and CB2 activation, with the THC, but you just don't need a ton of it, to influence cell signaling.
And are you aware of the product Undo, UNDO?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Well, that's a beautiful safety net for any senior that's coming in and trying cannabis for the first time and concerned. So we used to have samples of Undo, and I know the folks in Arizona that are behind it.
Yeah, for sure. And, biting on lemons, chewing on peppercorns, all of the things to try and back out the THC from the CB1 receptor for people that get scared and having tachycardia and having issues. We want rescue measures like that, but it all goes back to education. And it doesn't surprise me that you had the lowest percentage of flower sales and vaporization, because you have so many other options that you're bringing into that medical model and really working with people and meeting with them where they're at. If you're attracting more medical patients as opposed to the recreation,
Well, and the other thing too is for sustainability and for the lasting effects. Who wants to, smoke every 2, 3, 4 hours, right? It's like,
Right.
seriously. So you want it to be sustainable and you want it to have lasting impact, and you don't want to be like grabbing for something all the time. You want to be living your best life. Like, for example, me getting away from pharmaceuticals, I don't want to be grabbing for cannabis every hour. I want something that's going to last in my body so I don't have to be medicating all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
And just to your point, Elizabeth, when we first opened, that's all we had was flower. We didn't have the other products yet. The growers hadn't produced it yet. And we had one patient, he was a minor, 6 or 7 years old, came in with his parents. He had a seizure disorder. And, the parents wanted to do something for him. Nothing was really working. And so we had this device in the display case called an easy butter maker. And so what we did is we sold the parents flour. And then we knew exactly what the profile in that flour was because it was on the label. And we went through all the calculations on how to make an oil using this easy butter maker. And it was beautiful. I mean, they made an oil and they put it in a brownie or a Rice Krispie treat, and the kid really responded. And we used the right ratios of very high CBD, very low THC. And we had a state inspector come in. I've been in pharmacy for a long time. I would see a state inspector maybe once every 2 years. They were in our dispensary 4 times in the first year. They came in and they asked the question, have you sold any flour to a minor? And I said, well, yeah, and they looked on our BioTrack system and we got fined for that. But I explained why we did it that way, but we still got fined for it. So it's just, it was ridiculous.
That's insanity. And I know you sold it to the parents, not the 7-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
The purchaser was the parents, and you could have just stopped there. You're too honest. Yeah. But,
Well,
on that note with seizures, right? We've seen kids where they're taking Epidiolex and we help them supplement with whole plant full spectrum to bring in the other terpenoids and cannabinoids. And they have a much better experience.
There's a couple of kids that I took care of that had brain cancer that actually were, that had seizure disorders, and they were actually started on Epidiolex in the hospital, and then it would work, but it stopped working. And so we talked to the neurologist, and the neurologist agreed, and then we would give them the rest of the plant to support the Epidiolex, and they'd have much better outcome of controlling their seizures, combining dispensary products plus the Epidiolex.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Wow.
Really fascinating.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I want to show everyone.
Let's close with the video.
I want to close with your amazing video. I mean, Joseph, just meeting you for the first time in person and just doing the research and paying attention, looking at your LinkedIn and looking at your website and looking at everything that you did. You are so deserving of this award. And I want the viewers to see this video. And then we'll close out the show.
Yeah, and thank you for your advocacy and your work.
Yeah. So
Elizabeth. Thank you, Sherry.
This is Joe winning his award.
There you go.
And we're going to pop it up right now.
This next pharmacist for over 10 years now. He is my go-to guy when it came to cannabis medicine and understanding it when it was unheard of, talking about it in the realm of pharmacists. I want to welcome Joseph Friedman to the Pharmacy 50, and I'm so proud to have you here, Joe.
Thank you, Todd. Glad to be here. And, it's been quite some time. We've known each other. And I've got a couple of show and tell things I want to show you. But basically, I know I've got limited time. But, back in 2013, I started getting into this industry. And the legislation was coming to Illinois. And I just figured, okay, open up a medical cannabis dispensary and just, see what happens. And what happened from that point is I took it to the next level because we were the only dispensary in the entire state of Illinois that had healthcare professionals full-time inside. Others claimed it, but it was BS. And I had a hospice nurse on board, and we were the first dispensary in the nation to host 2 colleges of pharmacy, to have 4th-year pharmacy students doing clinical rotations. I was the preceptor. And then I went on to do a lot of public speaking at pharmacy conventions as early as 2015. And and it just has been quite a ride. And what's interesting about these pharmacy students is they always, after the 6-week rotations, they always gave us a gift. So this is, let's see if I can get this. Cannabis sativa and cannabis indica. That was one of the gifts, and these are just cool things. And this was just one gift from one pharmacy student. We never asked for anything, but they always showed so much appreciation for having one of the most unique clinical rotations, that they ever experienced. So, and then one of the other things that I'm working on, more show and tell, is 6 months ago, started working with a company that was involved with cannabis education. And we had this idea of creating like a one-of-a-kind educational platform. And this platform has turned into this, which is the periodic table of the cannabis plant molecules. And no one has ever done this before, and I'm the architect of it. But we have all of the cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids and precursor acids organized by their molecular weight. And this is the static version of it. The online version of it has 187 pages of scientific documentation behind the medical benefit of these molecules. And we're going to have an interactive chart that users and healthcare providers can use to click on each molecule, see what it does, see the science behind it. And then there'll be a drop-down list with about 40 health conditions where you click on your condition and the molecules that address that are going to light up. And then you can print that and bring it through to a dispensary and drive product development from the growers to put these molecules in products. And then we're also going to use this as a blueprint. I've got all the right people aligned, some Harvard-educated doctors and scientists from a biotech company in Boston, as well as all the right people in Illinois to grow and to look at patients. We're going to select about 5 different indications. I know I'm going over, but we're going to use this to develop FDA-approved pharmaceuticals, either through big pharma or through OTC companies.
That's incredible, Joe. We're going to hear more about it on This Week in Pharmacy. I'm going to bring you on Cannabis Pharmacy University as well, and panel discussions that we're putting together. And we're so excited about your representation of our profession in driving better information, better education around cannabis medicine. So thank you so much for being here.
Joe, good job.
Thank you.
That was
Thank
amazing.
you. I was a little bit long-winded, and I probably should have spent more time accepting the award and showing my appreciation, but it was just exciting, and I know I had limited time, so I just sort of went crazy.
Well,
You did great.
I would like to invite you back and talk just about product development and the next foray that you're going to have and how we can get involved, because you need a couple good nurses.
I agree. I love nurses. I've always respected the nursing profession, got along well with nurses when I was working in hospitals. And so, kudos to you for what you're doing, with the podcast, with the Green Nurse, and what both of you are doing clinically with your patients.
Thank you. Well, congratulations, Joe. We are so grateful that you were on the show. And for anyone that is new and that is watching, if you look in the show notes, there's links to Joe's LinkedIn page, as well as a Accountability page as well, the website.
Great.
So this has been an amazing podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. And remember what it's all about. It is truly all about living your best life and helping others do the same. And I'm going to close with one last video, because it is the most moving video of all that I've ever created. And we will see you again next week. We have Nurse Denise coming on. She is going to be talking about energized living and the elevated way, and how she is working with products to reach patients, specifically women that are looking to feel better. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses Group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.